General Hospital spoilers update for Tuesday, June 10th, says that Michael Corinthos will hit back while Martin Gray returns. Ava Jerome will also ring the alarm, so there'll be some exciting stuff happening on canvas. In the courtroom, Willow Corinthos will have to answer Diane Miller's question about whether it's more vital to be with Drew Kane or her own kids. Of course, Willow will spin things and make it look like being together as a family with Drew is what's best for Wiley Corinthos and Amelia Corinthos. That's certainly not the case now that Drew's demonstrated he's prepared to lie to Wiley and mess with his head. Drew undermined any opportunity of compromise, therefore Willow will stand by her choice to seek after sole custody. However, Michael will get a chance to strike back with Diane's support. You can know that Diane will pull out all the stops in the courtroom and put her legal abilities to good use. At some point, Diane may challenge Willow's allegation about Michael turning her away at the German clinic. Drew was the saboteur in that circumstance too, since he bribed an employee to declare Michael wanted nothing to do with Willow. That stunner may not be revealed just yet, but this could begin the ball rolling on it by generating doubts about what really transpired. Other GH spoilers claim Laura Collins has a heartbreaking reunion ahead of her. Martin will return to Port Charles, so Laura will love seeing her half-brother again. Although Martin's been dealing with some legal troubles off-screen, he'll be back with the law in his corner for once. Martin and Tracy Quartermaine may have more turmoil ahead of them, but Tracy will find herself coping with a different dilemma for now. Brooke Lynn Quartermaine is all fired up against Lulu Spencer, but Tracy may caution her about hiring Marco Rios and adding to the drama. Tracy would argue that Brooke Lynn's attention ought to be on fixing the damage with Giovanni Gio Palmier, not fixating on Lulu retribution. Meanwhile, Christina Corinthos Davis will have a proposal for Cody Bell to chew over. It looks like Christina will seek to put Ava at the center of a lawsuit with Cody's cooperation. Speaking of Ava, she'll have some words of wisdom for Trina Robinson. Trina may share concerns about Kai Taylor's faith in Drew, and encourage Ava to sound the alarm about him. It seems Ava will push Trina to keep her guard up and tell Kai to do the same. In Portia Robinson's office, Kai will feel the urge to apologize to her. Will Kai be remorseful for listening in on Portia's latest dispute with Curtis Ashford and confess what he overheard? Kai is in the loop on Curtis' shady Jacinda plan now, so it might be a huge problem for Curtis and Portia. Other General Hospital teasers predict Isaiah Gannon will listen to someone's seductive pitch. Lucky Spencer will be spending the summer traveling with Aiden Weber before figuring out his next step. Perhaps Lucky will wonder if Isaiah wants to embark on another trip and assist him play hero in some foreign land. There was a moment when Isaiah might have leaped at that opportunity, but now he's committed to his position at GH. No matter what offer he receives, Isaiah will have an opportunity to react to Lucky's news that he's leaving town. Lucky will bid farewell to Isaiah along with Laura soon, so stay tuned for updates on the rest of his departure moments. The morning sun soared over Port Charles, golden light striking the rippling water along the docks and bathing the Quartermaine house in a false serenity. But beyond that apparent serenity, tension had already began its gradual build, one that promised to detonate before the day was done. Michael Corinthos stood on the back terrace, a hot cup of black coffee in hand, his eyes concentrated on nothing in particular. His tie was still slack, his shirt sleeves rolled up, and yet his stance exuded a frigid resolve. He'd spent the last week tiptoeing the brink of reconciliation and retribution. But today he wasn't hesitating anymore. The meeting had been scheduled in secret, only 2 people knew about it. He hadn't even informed Willow, not because he was hiding anything from her, but because he didn't want her burdened with what might come next. This was business, but it was also personal, deeply personal, and it included someone Michael had once considered a brother. Drew Kane. Drew had been falling more into a perilous gray zone ever since his discharge from Pentonville. There were whispers in the corporate halls of ELQ, hushed rumors that Aurora was making untraceable moves, non-transparent purchases, unexpected contract shutdowns, investments in shelf fronts. Michael had ignored them at first, but when Aurora financing quietly slipped out of a collaborative Q Foundation project without explanation, he sensed something had shifted. If Drew was swapped out for a phony, it would actually make a lot of sense. Drew hasn't behaved like his former self in quite some time, so it's possible he's being held captive while an imposter runs his life. Shiloh Archer illusions have gotten more common in the discourse, so no one can rule out the notion of him making a soapy comeback as Drew. The show might reverse Shiloh's demise and use plastic surgery or a realistic Drew mask as an excuse for his new appearance. There's no doubting that Drew is manipulating Willow exactly like Shiloh did. And Michael himself even made a comment about that on the witness stand. Of course, it's also conceivable someone else is acting as Drew, or that he's been mind-controlled into being this new version of himself. Whatever the case, Drew's options are limited now that he's gone this far off the rails. If the writers ever plan on a redemption storyline, they may have to get inventive and put an imposter at the center of it all. General Hospital spoilers predict more Drew curveballs are still to come, so stay tuned for updates on all the surprising news and chaotic consequences. The issue of whether Drew is beyond redemption lingers like a shadow, haunting those who once trusted in him. His past is a tapestry of blunders, betrayals, and broken promises, each thread building a worse picture of a man who seems to have burnt every bridge behind him. Those who loved him have grown jaded, their hope crushed by disappointment. Yet just when it seems there's no turning back, a stunning twist emerges, one so unexpected that it pushes everyone to reconsider. Is Drew truly gone, or is there still a chance for him to rewrite his fate? Redemption is seldom a straightforward journey. For some, it needs sacrifice. For others, it demands a reckoning so terrible that it strips them down to their core. Drew's journey has been marked by defiance, a persistent refusal to face the damage he's inflicted. He's been the villain in too many stories, the one who walked away when he should have stayed, who lied when honesty could have saved him. The people in his life have long since ceased making excuses for him. His family speaks his name with resignation, his friends have faded into the background, and even his foes have lost interest in his downfall. To them, Drew is a closed chapter, a cautionary story of wasted potential. But what if the story isn't over? This twist changes everything. Perhaps it's a long-buried secret now coming to light, one that moves the blame away from him. Maybe it's an act of unexpected heroism, a moment where Drew steps into the flames to save someone else without a second thought. Or, most heartbreaking of all, it may be the knowledge that Drew wasn't the genuine architect of his own destruction, that someone else has been pulling the strings all along, making him the scapegoat for their faults. Whatever the case, this revelation forces people who wrote him off to reassess what they thought they knew. The individuals closest to Drew are the hardest hurt by this transition. Those who cut him out of their lives now confront a difficult dilemma. Do they dare trust him again? Trust, once damaged, is nearly impossible to repair. Every pleasant word from Drew is received with mistrust, every promise measured against his history of empty ones. His family watches him with wary eyes, waiting for the other shoe to drop. His oldest friend, the one who stuck by him longer than anyone, hesitates before answering his calls. The woman who once loved him, the one who still carries the scars he left behind, finds herself split between the man he was and the man he might now become. Then there's the matter of culpability. If Drew was controlled, if he was more pawn than villain, does it excuse him? Or does it only exacerbate the tragedy? Some would argue that he still made his decisions, that no outside influence can totally excuse the harm he caused. Others will see him as a victim in his own right, a man who deserves a second shot now that the truth is out. The most agonizing lesson, however, is that atonement isn't just about Drew proving himself. It's about whether the people he injured are ready to let him try. And what of Drew himself? Does he even seek redemption? There's a certain safety in being the irredeemable one. No expectations, no pressure to improve. If he welcomes this twist, if he uses it as a lifeline to fight his way back, it means facing everything he spent years escaping from. It means looking his faults in the eye and admitting he was wrong. For a man who has built his character on defiance, that kind of humility might be the hardest struggle of all. But suppose he does take that step. Suppose he stands before the people he's injured and doesn't make excuses, doesn't shift blame, just says, "I'm sorry," and means it. What then? Does the world extend its arms to him, or are certain wounds too deep to heal? The terrible truth is that redemption doesn't guarantee forgiveness. Some doors once closed stay closed. Some relationships can't be healed, no matter how much the heart wishes otherwise. Drew may have to accept that even with this twist, even with his greatest attempts, some elements of his history will always stay damaged. Yet there's a power in the attempt. Even if not everyone forgives him, Even if some walks away for forever, the act of trying to change could be Drew's salvation. Redemption isn't simply about gaining back the love of others. It's about reclaiming his own self-respect. It's about looking in the mirror and no longer seeing the man who wrecked everything. That in itself might be enough. Then again, what if this twist isn't the salvation it looks to be? What if it's just another layer of the game, another deception? The uncertainty creeps in, as it often does with Drew. Can he be trusted even now? Or is this just another performance, another manipulation masquerading as growth? The people around him will grapple with these questions, their hearts at conflict with their instincts. In the end, the answer to whether Drew is beyond redemption doesn't rest in the twist itself. It lies in what he does with it. A single moment doesn't define a man. It's the actions that follow that reveal his actual character. If he uses this opportunity to become better, to make atonement, then maybe there's still hope for him. But if he squanders it, if he falls back into old patterns, then the world will know for certain. Drew had his moment and he let it slip away. And he wasn't going to let it slide. Drew had taken on the world to protect the people he cared about, but lately Michael had begun to fear Drew was protecting something, or someone else. Maybe even himself. Maybe something worse. And now that Sonny was drifting back toward a sort of control Michael didn't trust, he couldn't afford to let Drew uncontrolled. He looked at his phone. 10 more minutes till the initial move was made. Downtown, the elevator doors opened on the 14th floor of the Port Charles courthouse, and Martin Gray strolled out as he had never been gone. His linen suit looked pristine, his cane tapping lightly as he walked, and his characteristic smirk rested securely beneath a clipped white beard. For weeks, he'd been overseas handling affairs. But the truth was more complicated. He'd been watching, waiting. And now he was back because the legal and moral gridlines of the town had once again begun to blur. And he never did well with stillness. His homecoming wasn't public information yet. He'd planned it that way. He'd hardly made a halt before his first meeting with a client who had begged him to return. Nina Reeves. Martin wasn't foolish. He knew her reputation had plunged faster than any PR campaign could rescue. And even if her name wasn't emblazoned across the headlines anymore, her influence, or what was left of it, still mattered. She was still married to Sonny in name, still a businesswoman, and still very much someone who left damage in her wake. But Martin wasn't back just for Nina. Laura had called him too. Not officially, of course, but in her own Laura way. Coded words, delicate concerns, subtle connotations. She was apprehensive about the folks circling her grandchild. About Esme's ghost still haunting her family. About Trina and Spencer's memory. And about Drew Kane. Martin made a mental point to visit the art gallery before the day was done. Not because he wanted to buy anything, but because that's where the next break in the foundation might arise. Across town at the Jerome Gallery, Ava was already 2 espressos deep and still trying to piece together what her senses were screaming at her. She sat behind her desk, flipping through an acquisition proposal, though her eyes weren't truly examining the pages. She was preoccupied, but not by the art. She was thinking of Drew. It had began subtly. An unusual comment at the Metro Court, an accidental meeting at the docks, a closed-door chat that had slipped just a little too fast from casual to covert. She didn't trust easily, especially not anymore. And something about the way Drew had been moving about Port Charles lately had her antenna pinging. It wasn't only the commercial dealings. It was how smoothly he skirted inquiries, how readily he redirected discourse. Drew had always been skilled at charm, but this felt like something different. And then there was the talk she'd overheard, unintentionally of course. A late-night phone call in the corridor outside her suite. She couldn't make out much, but one line had chilled her. She doesn't see it coming. That's the point. Ava didn't know who she was, but she had a sickening sense it could be someone she cared about. And that's why she had requested Trina to meet her. Trina came just past noon, her hair pulled back in a slick ponytail, a leather sketchpad under one arm. She appeared calm, concentrated. But Ava knew that look well. It was the same one she'd worn when everything in her own life had been on the point of collapse. Focus could be a mask. Trina greeted her cordially with a genuine grin, but her expression transformed when she recognized Ava's tone was serious. "Something wrong?" she asked, settling into one of the gallery chairs. Ava didn't answer straight away. She closed the file in front of her, leaned forward and folded her hands. I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think about it before you answer. Have you noticed anything odd about Drew Kane? Trina blinked. Drew? Not really. I mean, he's been busy with the LQ, and I haven't seen him that much. I'm not talking about being busy, Ava said. I mean strategic. Calculated. Saying one thing and doing another. Trina tilted her head, apprehensive now. Why? Ava hesitated, then proceeded. I don't know what he's involved in, but I have a feeling it's something that could blow back on people he claims to care about. You're smart, Trina, and you've had to grow up faster than others. I'm telling you now because I don't want you caught in the middle of something dangerous. Trina gazed down at her sketchpad, her mind churning. You think he's using people? I think he's covering something. And when people cover things, they create mistakes. Other people are hurt. Back at ELQ, Drew hurried briskly into the main conference room, his aide trailing behind him with a file marked confidential. Drew's expression was cool, confident, even relaxed. But behind it, his mind were racing. He knew Michael had been asking questions. He knew the Q board was getting skeptical of recent movements. And he knew that certain money channels were beginning to create a trail, one that could lead to the wrong conclusions or the right ones depending on who was looking. But Drew wasn't terrified of exposure. He was frightened of betrayal. Joss didn't wait. She dragged Emma into a sprint, running down the south wall toward the emergency chute that led to the rear exit. They were spotted. Shouts rang out. A gunfire boomed behind them, but it went wide. Outside, the sky was dark now, and Jocelyn's automobile was parked 2 streets away. She half-dragged Emma to it, heart thumping, then slammed the car into gear and drove away. They didn't speak for 15 minutes. Only after they reached the safe home did Joss finally breath. It was a concealed garage space off the rear of a building owned by Carly, and used undetected. She guided Emma inside and locked the steel door behind them. Emma sat on the old couch, shaking, draping a blanket over her shoulders. I shouldn't have come back, she said. But I got a message. From someone inside WSB. A whistleblower. They stated I was the only one who could defend the truth. And what truth is that? Joss asked. Emma looked up, her eyes frightened. That the WSB has been funding behavioral experiments on teenagers through psychiatric retreats across Europe. That they're molding young minds to become spies. Assets. Using grief, trauma, emotional suppression. Joss felt nauseous. They're calling it Project Herald. The name rung a bell. A murmur from an old file Robert had previously buried deep in the PCPD evidence room. What happens if this gets out? Joss asked. They'll discredit me, Emma replied. Or kill me. Not if I expose them first, Jocelyn answered. She spent the next 48 hours assembling the evidence from Emma's USB drive, hidden inside a bracelet, and cross-referencing it with data from Robert Scorpio's legacy folder, which she still had access to thanks to a short-lived internship at the DA's office. The pieces aligned. Medical reports. Psychological logs. A delivery manifest for a device labeled Emotion Suppressor Unit, Trial Phase 3. When she sent it to her journalist contact, the reply came in minutes. This goes all the way to Geneva. You sure you're ready for the blowback? She wasn't. But it didn't matter. She hit send. The leak hit within hours. It was chaos. The WSB denied everything, of course, but Senator Devereaux in D.C. called for a hearing within 24 hours. Robert Scorpio returned from a family trip to London to voice a blistering condemnation against the weaponization of trauma. And Victor Cassidy's old pals began to scatter. Back in Port Charles, the fallout was imminent. Emma was awarded federal protection. Joss became an unofficial heroine, though her mother nearly had a breakdown when she learned the truth. And Dex disappeared. She didn't know if he'd left because he was terrified or furious or sheltering her from what followed next. But she hadn't heard from him since the spill. Not even a message. Still, Jocelyn didn't regret it. She saved Emma. She exposed Project Herald. And she reminded Port Charles, and the WSB, that the next generation wasn't here to be dominated. They were coming to fight back. General Hospital spoilers and updates show that Jason Morgan and Britt Westbourne might have an opportunity for a fresh relationship. It seems that Steve Burton's character is positioned for a rekindled love tale, So let's discuss what could be on the horizon for the ABC soap. When Jason made his way back to Port Charles following his alleged death and the undercover FBI mission he'd been dragged into, he was confronted with some sad news. Jason felt a tremendous sadness upon knowing about Britt's poor situation. Naturally, General Hospital fans will remember that Britt was harmed by Heather Weber's poisoned hook, leading to her terrible fate. It appeared like Britt was gone to them for good. Although in Port Charles, surprising returns are always a possibility. Kelly Thibault is expected to come back this July, but the show hasn't specified if she will resume her role as Britt or not. It's feasible that Thibault might be portraying an entirely different character, although rejecting Britt's potential reappearance just because she's purportedly dead would be a misstep. Numerous soap opera characters have appeared to be permanently gone only to emerge alive later on. In the episode aired on June 6th, Cody Bell remembered about his initial dive into the Metro Court pool, which recalled some memories of Britt. Additionally, Cody and Molly Lansing Davis lifted a glass in honor of Britt, implying that the program could be hinting at her eventual comeback. The writers of GH may uncover a means to undo Britt's awful fate, and potentially even cancel her Huntington's disease diagnosis as well. Is Professor Dalton cloning around in his lab? There have been whispers regarding Professor Henry Hank Dalton's storyline that includes clones and numerous significant surprises, signaling that everything is possible on the ABC serial series. If Thibault is actually making a reappearance as Britt, it would be a perfect occasion to restart her romance with Jason. The show previously tried with coupling Jason and Britt, which generated a lot of fan support for them as a relationship. Even in the event that Kelly Thibault portrays a different character, the show may still rely on her unmistakable on-screen chemistry with Steve Burton. Thibault's character truly deserves to be matched with Jason, especially since he hasn't had a serious love partner for quite a while. Do you want to see Britt and Jason get another chance? Of course, there is a possibility the authors might go the easy path like they did with Jason and his retcon twin brother Drew Kane. In other words, although Madeline Reeves divided up Nina Reeves' twins, she managed to nab Britt's twin from Liesl too, and Liesl didn't know it. Regardless, would you be interested in seeing Jason and Britt receive another go at romance? Or would you prefer watch Jason develop affections for Thibault's proposed new character instead? General Hospital spoilers reveal that Jason may be in for a huge shock, so make sure to stay tuned. The night was calm in Port Charles, the kind of quiet that never lasted long. The streets were calm, lights flickering across the bay, but inside the city's various corners, hospitals, safe houses, brownstones, and waterfronts, lives were stirring, emotions seething. And in one of those corners, Jason Morgan stood unmoving by the edge of Pier 55, his breath clouding in the night air as his thoughts intertwined in ways he rarely allowed. Jason didn't dwell. That wasn't how he was wired. He acted. He reacted. He kept people secure. But tonight, the cold wind wasn't enough to blow away the memory that had returned like a ghost demanding to be ignored. Britt Westbourne. It had been months since he'd seen her face. Not in passing, not in the casual nod of shared past, but genuinely seen her. The last time they really spoke, there had been hurt, distance, and unspoken words between them. Too much left unsaid. Too much left unfinished. Jason had gone away. He thought he was doing what was right, protecting her, shielding her from the storm that followed him. But he hadn't forgotten the gleam in her eyes that day. The disappointment, the hurt, the frustration at being treated like she didn't have a voice in her own risk. He told himself it was necessary, that Britt deserved a clean life, one without the bloodshed and danger that preceded him like a shadow. But lately he wasn't so sure anymore. Not because the threat had passed, if anything it had just escalated, but because her absence had become a continuous anguish. He had never really believed in the crisp distinctions between loyalty and power. Not since Helena. Not since Afghanistan. Not even since Carly. But he had assumed for a time that he and Michael were aligned in their principles. And now he wasn't so sure. So when his assistant mentioned that Michael had just arrived downstairs, Drew didn't flinch. He simply nodded and said, "Send him in." Michael came into the conference room without so much as a welcome. He dropped a folder upon the table and crossed his arms. "What is this?" Drew asked, not opening it. "Proof," Michael said, "of what you've been doing with shell companies. Ghost LLCs moving monies under Aurora's umbrella." Drew eventually picked up the folder and glanced over the papers. His face remained unreadable. "This isn't illegal," he stated simply. "It's not ethical either," Michael yelled. "And it's not transparent. You're exploiting company resources to build leverage." "Against who?" "Sonny." "Me?" "Carly. What are you planning?" Drew stood. "You don't want to go down this road with me, Michael." "Oh, I already have. You just didn't notice it." Silence spread between them. Michael took a breath. "I'm not here to threaten you. But if you're going to play this game, I'm not going to sit back. I've already talked to the board." Drew grinned slightly. "You think I didn't see that coming?" Michael drew closer, voice low and strong. "Just remember, this isn't Pentonville. You don't get to run things from the shadows." Later that afternoon, Martin made his way to Nina's new office, a scaled, slightly humbler version of her previous crimson suite. She looked up when he arrived, relief sweeping over her face for the first time in weeks. "You came," she continued, voice thin. "I always come when it's about damage control," Martin said. "What mess are we cleaning up this time?" Nina sighed. "The kind I'm not sure can be cleaned." Martin sat down. "Try me," she proceeded to explain. Her cut ties with Sonny, the destroyed friendships, the litigation still hanging over her. But more than that, she talked of the feeling that someone was driving things behind the scenes. Not only against her, but against a lot of others who used to be close. Michael, Carly, even Ava. Martin listened closely, nodding. "You think someone's orchestrating a shift in power?" "I don't think it," Nina said. "I know it. And you think it's Drew." "I think he's not the man we think he is." Martin sat back, pondering. "Well then, maybe it's time someone reminded Mr. Kane that secrets don't stay buried forever." Evening fell over Port Charles with a peculiar quiet. Michael returned home, greeted by Willow and the kids, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Willow waited until the kids were asleep before asking gently, "Did you do what you needed to do?" Michael looked at her for a long time. "I struck back." She nodded slowly and without judgment grasped his hand. Across town, Ava sat alone in the gallery, glass of wine in hand, staring out at the skyline. Her thoughts was still on Trina. On Drew. On the rising conviction that the past was going to repeat itself. She'd seen this play before. A man with charm and secrets. A town distracted by louder scandals. And a girl too close to the bomb zone. She wouldn't let it happen again. Not this time. General Hospital spoilers show that Drew Kane is finding ways to descend lower and lower. It appears like Drew will cross any line to achieve what he wants. Thus many GH viewers have gotten enraged about his disgusting behavior. Drew's newest evil move was lying about Michael Corinthos not wanting Wiley Corinthos and Amelia Corinthos anymore. Once Drew knew Wiley was approaching on the June 9th episode, he openly told Rick Lansing about Michael only coming home for Sasha Corbin and their new baby girl. Drew also lied when Willow Corinthos brought up the matter later. After toying with poor Wiley's emotions, Drew pretended he was innocent and made Michael appear to be the unwell one. Manipulating a tiny kid is about as low as it goes. Especially when Drew claims to love Wiley. If Drew genuinely did, he wouldn't be stooping to this level of lying to keep Wiley away from his beloved father. Since Drew has gone so far out of control, plenty of supporters believe he's beyond salvation. Is there any way to restore the damage now that Drew's become such a monster? At this point, it's going to be tough to ever convince viewers that Drew is a good guy again. Drew was once a heroic character who actually cared about other people. But now he's a villain who only looks out for himself. However, there could be a road to repairing Drew if that's what GH writers choose to do. It's a technique that CDL has speculated on previously, but it's worth examining now that Drew's gone even further into evil territory. The show has one final way they can spin all this if they want Drew's road to redemption. It seems like an imposter switch might be the only way that could save Drew. At least the genuine one.